Welcome. Thanks everybody for joining us. We got a great interview tonight with Blueprint, just about to join us here to talk about his new book. So once we get Print in, get everything up nice and crispy. Hello, sir.
How you doing, sir?
All right, welcome. Thanks for joining in, man. It's great to have you, and I'm really excited to speak to you about your book and Super Duty Tough Work and all those things. Good here. So welcome from New York City, but yes, sir. Great to
Thanks for
connect.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, man.
All
Glad to be
right,
here.
thanks a lot. So look, we've got Blueprint with us, and everybody is filling in. I want to kind of pump up the volume here a little bit so I get everything right in the headphones. So we're here tonight to talk with Blueprint about his new book called The Social Media Cheat Code: Game-Changing Strategies to Help Artists Conquer Social Media. I want to give people a little bit of background on the connection between Blueprint and myself, because you might be wondering, this is about baseball. What are we doing talking about social media? All right, so for folks that know me from my former life, I did radio for from 98 to 2008, and I got to know Blueprint's music really well through my dealings in hip hop and under my former guise as DJ Primetime, and I first got put on to Blueprint through RJG2. So on the Dead Ringer album, and that was my introduction to Blueprint, and played his music on my radio show until through 2008, and kind of lost track, and came back on Twitter a few years ago and saw the Super Duty Tough Work podcast. I was like, I know Blueprint, and let me start checking in, man. And I don't know, probably last three years or so, been listening real consistently, and the stuff that he's put out there has just been tremendous advice for anybody who's like an independent, creative artist, and you don't necessarily have to be in the music game. So when I saw the book, I was like, I have to get this, and I thought it was a great way to connect. So, Print, I guess let's start out like this. What made you put this book together after, really being so in depth on your podcast? What led you to put out the book, The Social Media Cheat Code?
Um, I think the podcast played a part, right? Because you have these conversations with artists, and then you realize this is how a lot of artists really are really artists, and they're not really marketers. They're not social media experts, even those who have followings. And I started coaching artists as well, and that kind of led me to having a lot of conversations with artists just about like strategy. And there would be people I would talk to about strategy who weren't necessarily hip hop people all the time. I had friends who were like social media managers and things like that. And so I would routinely chop it up with them about, what we should be doing, what works, what doesn't work online, sharing with them things I did that worked, what didn't work. And I was realizing through those conversations, like, no one has ever really just wrote a book for artists that's specifically designed to help them with social media. And because artists are different, we're not quite like other people. And so I thought I want to write something about like about social media that's specifically for artists. And when we did an episode called The Social Media Cheat Code
Mm-hmm.
about two, and that was our first time really trying to give artists specific advice towards how to handle themselves online. And it was really well received. We did that one live, so we really liked it. And I was like, okay, it'd be dope if I could start thinking about putting some of these ideas in book form so that people who maybe listen to an episode can have a reference. And so I wanted to start picking certain episodes and maybe expanding on them and making books out of them. And this was one where I was like, I think I can really turn that into a book to where anybody who wants to just kind of get started needs. It's basically like if you were to book a session with me and we were to have like a coaching session, or if I was to give you advice, everything that I would do or tell you is in a book. And I try to make it so it would be a reference, so people wouldn't have to necessarily go back and watch the episode again.
Mm-hmm. And so can you talk a bit about the process of actually writing the book, which is something that you discuss often on the podcast, but moving it from audio to the written word is not always the easiest thing, because, you convey things differently through print versus audio, no pun intended there. But yeah, so what was that process like for you moving it from one medium to another?
Everything kind of starts with me. We joke about the podcast and how it's all about the bullet points and such, but the bullet points really helpful for me, kind of getting a grasp for writing the books. Going through that process where every week where we got to actually our conversations are always well defined by we have these kind of outlines of these conversations where most
Hmm.
people just talk, right? Or you don't know where the conversation is going or where it's at. We try to make sure we communicate that every week with the bullet points. And so doing that every week for 4 or 5 years, you start to get an idea, okay, how should I frame this conversation? What are the most important things I should hit on? So the book really started with bullet points. We started with the episode, and from there, we had about 10 points.
Hmm.
When I was working on the book, I saw that some of them kind of overlapped. It wasn't exactly like that. So I was like, you know what, some of these can go, some of these can stay. And I had to really kind of narrow it down. But the book kind of helped me get an outline to see how, if like how far I could take it. So I got this outline from the episode. That's okay. I've got these 10 things now. Now let me just sit down. And my process was to just sit down for 1 to 3 hours a day. 1 to 3 hours a day. And sometimes I would write, you know, 500 words. Sometimes I would write 1,200 words. Sometimes I would
Hmm.
write more. But every day I was writing, you know. And my goal was just to write a nice chunk of a chapter, even if it was just the intro for the chapter, so I'll know where the chapter was going to go,
Sure.
and then the next day come back and flesh it out. And so that process, I mean, I wrote the book maybe in about 2.5, 3 months total time, but it was basically spending about 1 to 3 hours on the book every day. That's just the writing part, not the revision part.
Right. And how did you piece that around, making music and putting out the rest of the content that, you do on the regular? Because that's a significant amount of energy, to
Yeah.
put in the writing and then try to, change modes and then go into whatever you're producing, writing, rapping, whatever, it is you're doing, setting up all of your digital content as well.
It's hard. It's hard. That's one thing I've struggled with in the last year. I'm not gonna lie. Like writing books does take something out of you to where I've found, like you're saying, that sometimes when I'm writing a book, I can't write rhymes
Hmm.
because it's the same part of my brain. I can't be actively working on a album and writing a book at the same time, you know? And so I pretty much when I do my books now, I feel like if I'm gonna write this book, I'm gonna go all in. And that's why when I say I write my books, I'm not the kind of guy who can spend 3 years, 4 years writing a book. I don't have that kind of time because I
Hmm.
like to get back to music, like you're saying. There's other things I really enjoy, like making beats, books, video stuff, things I really do that have a bigger impact that I'm known for, that I just can't abandon that to write a book, but not for long periods. But I figured out for myself that if I take, 2 months, 3 months to write a book and just go as hard as possible, then I can really get it done in a way that it doesn't have a negative impact on my art. So
Sure.
it's like total immersion for 2, 3 months. And after that, it's pretty much done.
Yeah, because managing all those things could definitely get tricky
Yeah.
because again, you only have so much energy, so much headspace, and like you said, it touches on the same nerves, right? Writing is writing,
Yeah.
whether you pen and rhymes or you're putting them in a book. I want to take a moment just to shout out all the people that I see you that are checking in on the
Yeah.
chat. We see y'all. It's a little hard to type and talk right about now, but we see y'all. We want to say peace and what's up, and thank you, for checking again. We're here with Blueprint. We're talking about his book. It's called The Social Media Cheat Code: Game-Changing Strategies to Help Artists Conquer Social Media. I highly recommend that you pick it up. You can get it through his website, weightless.net. And so again, we'll get that out before we get to end of it. Going with the social media theme, and again, knowing how long you've been in music and online, and I want to give people a bit of some background in terms of online presence, because they're saying, well, you might say you're an artist. Well, what exactly do you know about social media? And, I think people here may not recognize when I start throwing out words like hip hop infinity, undergroundhiphop.com, rec.music hip hop, right? If you want to go back to like the Usenet boards, there has always been mediums which we have communicated the music, what we're doing with the music, discussing the music. And now, like, we've seen it progress for more than 20 years, going into these interactive forums as it went through, people communicated through Instant Messenger. And then as we started going to different platforms and, the whole MySpace era, which we like lived and did music through. And then coming out of that with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Now we have TikTok, YouTube. We saw the whole progression of that as well. So when, people read your book, I want them to realize that this is a progression of we've seen the message boards, and I see right here, Waylist.net had a message board too, right? How many artists had their own individual message boards? And you're trying to go to all of them to make connections. So it's like we were always online, OK Player, whatever it was, all these different message boards, trying to get the word out. And now it's just, we've been fortunate enough now to have it in a few centralized places instead of these like all these kind of niche places that might have been, supporting artists. But it's interesting to see like where different things popped off. And that gave us, I think, some background for what we have in front of us today. Can you talk a bit about your experience going through all those meetings, even though I kind of like spoke on it, but I'm sure, brought back a lot of memories and jogged a lot of things for you, mentioning all those names and places.
Oh yeah, like I started out, like you're saying, one of the first places I ever saw hip hop online being talked about was the rec.music.hiphop, right? And that was like crazy to me back then to see people, writers from all over, and a lot of those guys went on to be really big writers at that time. And that was the first place. And then I learned about a lot of hip hop records there. Then it went from there to message boards, to blogs, from blogs to social media, from social media to now you got like just pictures of like Snapchat and all this other stuff. Like we've seen so much of it, to email marketing, to where we got to have a completely different view of it. And for me personally, I think what it's allowed me to do is focus on like what has worked across all of these different eras for me. Because it's not, he said, I missed it. Omni-Mix days. Wow. Yeah. This message board, that was a wild place. But yeah, man, it's like being aboard this has allowed me to see all these different things. I've seen artists do the wrong things on social media. I've seen artists win doing the right things. And I borrow from all kind of people. I borrow from people who are not even hip hop artists, and I try to bring certain concepts that I've seen over there back to social media. And the people who are really paying attention, like the artists, especially if they're older artists, they notice like, okay, yeah, that was really slick. Okay, I see what you're doing over there. That's working. Maybe I should do that too. And we trade ideas, but a lot of it just comes from having a more of a perspective, a wide view of everything, because we've been involved in it so long.
Right, and we have that perspective. I love that word. That as getting a little bit older, we were able now to see how everything transition. Like you said, pick pieces that work, because there is probably a consistent theme, which you talk on in the book. And what I've really enjoyed about how you wrote the book was you have these actionable items at the end of every chapter. And I'm not going to go through each of them because I think that's why people really need to get the book. But I would like to touch on a few, because I think people who are listening that may not have the book, I think it'll give them a little bit more like, oh, that's in there, that's in there. So you talk a lot about analytics in there. And, can you discuss a little bit about what the importance is for anyone that's kind of in their social media on like how to analyze their analytics and then what to do with it?
Yeah. The main reason I talk about analytics in the book is because, I know that artists, sometimes it's easy for us to get discouraged. It's like we make a post and maybe it doesn't get a bunch of likes, or maybe it doesn't get as many views as we think, or maybe it doesn't get the comments that we think. Sometimes we see those posts, we get discouraged. Or we just say, man, F this, I ain't gonna post for the rest of the day. And we what we think is not working might actually work. But we don't know because we haven't looked at the data behind what we're doing online, right? So we ain't look. We might think, oh man, that picture, it only got 2 or 3 comments. But then when you look and you look at the analytics, like, oh man, the reach on that picture was 4,000 or 3,000. When you look at that, then you can reconcile the data with your emotions. That's what I like to talk about in the book, because a lot of times as artists, we'll come up with these reasons to not do social media the way that we should, or not participate, because at a surface level. I mean, no one really necessarily loves it, but we don't have the data to back up what we're doing. And so I try to talk about analytics as a means to reconcile lists. So like every app you use has data available, and it can go from the high level to very low level data, but it's there. And you can look back and see, okay, which tweets did I write that were actually cracking last month?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I should do more of that. When I talk about hip hop, that does really well. Maybe I should talk about hip hop more. Or what kind of pictures am I posting on Instagram that get the most response?
Sure.
It's like there's little things I would do accidentally, like posting. I posted a beat maybe 6 months ago, and it was like one of the rare times I posted beats. And it got a lot of reach. And I was like, whoa, all right, mental note. And then another time I was like, oh man, I took a quote from Twitter, put it on Instagram. And I was like, wow, this is getting more reach than anything I've ever done. Now, the tweet itself only got like, maybe 10, 20 retweets.
Right, but make a picture out of it.
1,000 reach, 200 comments, 50 saves,
Yeah.
shares. It's insane. The same tweet that got 10 retweets. But I wouldn't know that if I didn't look at the numbers to be like, you know what? I had to experiment, and then I looked at the numbers and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I should do more of this. And so I like to tell people, like, look, it's okay to not know what you're going to do, what you're doing. And it's okay to have stuff that works and doesn't. We all need to experiment, but don't be afraid to look at the data and do what the data is telling you is working, because the analytics are there to kind of help us stop guessing to be more successful.
Sure, and to make it baseball related, that's a big debate that's going on in baseball right now, is the use of data and analytics to inform decision making on the field. But we're on the field too right now, but it's on this, you know what I mean here. Sometimes triple posting something works too. It takes a couple for one or two to get traction. I know you also talk about repurposing content as well, and I think that that could go along with it from what EJGH just said. Another thing that you talk about is this balancing being on topic with personal, which is something that I've taken more attention to after, reading the book, is how much of yourself goes in the feed versus how much of like what your name stands for, right? So like for me, even though it's like baseball and some volleyball related, I'm also a teacher. I was also in music for a while, right? So it's like, how much do you post of yourself, and then how much you post of what people are really following you for? Because people are following you for different things, right? So you talk about balancing that out in the book. How do you manage that balance, and what should people look for in managing that balance between being all promo versus like, hey, I need to give information and a little bit about myself as well?
Yeah, that's another conversation that I think too is made easier when you understand. Well, you got to be willing to accept, first of all, like who people see you as, right? So like you and I have names, whether it's from DJing or hip hop, but we have other interests, basketball, or I like basketball, but you mess with baseball on a whole nother level than I mess with basketball. But
Right.
we can get away with certain things, but we have to make sure that we're always watching what people are responding to, because sometimes we can use these platforms as like emotional dumping grounds, or we forget why people are following us in the first place. And I've learned this from just watching many of the artists that I really love on record, following them on Twitter, and having them never, ever, ever talk about, post their music, mention music. They're posting about football 99% of the time, or current events all the time. I'm just like, what am I here for?
Well, how many artists right now kind of just messed up their following by being a little too involved or on the whatever the wrong side is of the COVID debate, right? There's definitely quite a few of our hip hop heroes who shot themselves in the foot by opining a little too much about
Right.
current events.
Yeah, and you can feel how you feel. And me and my friends talk about this all the time. You can feel how you feel about anything. I don't judge anybody for feeling whatever you feel on any particular issue. But the problem is when you forget that you have people following you for something else, and you don't read the room. And when you don't read the room, and these people, and you face this backlash, it all could have been avoided just by saying, I don't even need to talk about this. Like I've avoided so many arguments because I just choose to not talk about certain shit on my feeds. Now, every now and again, we'll talk about shit on the podcast. I'll talk about some
Right.
life, but that's because it's long form. It's not just 20 characters, 100 characters. It's actually, we can explain and give people context more if they
Mhm.
hear the tone of my voice. But in general, I try to stay out of certain conversations because, like you're saying, if you're on the wrong side of something, you feel like you just stepped in a big pile of shit, and it's kind of hard to get out of that. And it's like some guys just have to disappear from online. And I say, look, man, don't touch certain topics. But they do it because they think it's easy, right? Like, let me jump on this, ride this thing because it's easy, as
Yeah.
opposed to, let me think of another creative way to engage people with my art. That's hard sometimes.
It is. And, you know, this makes a good transition in your point about riding the wave. Sometimes some of those waves don't need to be ridden, for lack of a better word there, right? When is it advantageous for artists to ride the proverbial wave?
Only when you can link it back to yourself. Like I feel like the times I've done it successfully have been when whatever I was commenting on translated back to who I was, to my core beliefs, as a person, as an artist. So, if I'm commenting on something that corresponds with what I do, whether it's hip hop, whether it's
Mhm.
production, I feel way better about jumping on any wave about production. So, like, this is one I didn't jump on recently. Well, there's, I guess, some big debate about loops in the producer community some months back.
Sure.
I didn't jump on it, but at the time, I thought this could be something I could definitely talk about as someone who's come from our era where hip hop was just loops.
Hmm.
So anyone saying that loops are whack or that you shouldn't use them is like, man, that's something. But that, not that I should or should. It's more like I was able to recognize that I can do that one. That fits me.
Right.
As opposed to, oh man, this tweet about whatever the fuck.
Right. You're not going to get on the next challenge or whatever challenge is going on.
I'm not doing no milk crate challenge. How does
Right.
milk, unless we're talking about records.
Right. Then I'll take the picture of what's in the next room stacked
Exactly.
up. Right.
And in the caption, I'll put milk crate challenge successful. That would be the only way to kind of freak it. But outside of that, you're not gonna see me walking up no crates and walking down no crates.
No, not at all. Another thing I think that I really picked up on is the power of automation, right? And it keeps you from having to always be in front of the device. And especially for someone like me, I can get up at 6 a.m., schedule my post for the day, go teach, and now everything's running, by itself. And on my lunch, maybe I could check in on how things are doing, right? What is that freed up for you, and why do you recommend it?
Yeah, I recommend automation just because, like, being online all day can be draining.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, being online, or whether it's Instagram or Twitter all day, it's kind of like walking back into the kitchen every 15 minutes and looking in the refrigerator, hoping something. When you're hungry, like, man, is anything in it?
Yeah, you're expecting something to pop up, like come out from behind the milk, and it's not coming. Yeah.
Oh, it's a steak I hid underneath. Oh, let's be sexy. Let me grab this steak dinner. No, it's the same thing. You just keep looking over and over, and it's unproductive. So I don't recommend people stay online all the time. So automation to me makes perfect sense, right? So it's like, I'm gonna automate some of my content simply because it allows me, like you're saying, you can set your posts to go all day, and you're at work teaching.
Sure.
I set a lot of my stuff to hit at 8 a.m. and then I go about doing what I'm doing, the whole day. So on all my platforms, a lot of it's automated, and then I respond to the comments, but the content itself, the main content, is automated because I don't have the ability to stand over it all day. And I just
and I think if you're really organized, you can really plan stuff. You could do if you're really like, so if people listening are like, I want to post more often, you might be better served taking an hour on Sunday and putting up, scheduling everything for the whole week.
Yes, that's exactly
right. And then you can go and manage little pieces here and there, but you can have it set out, and then boom, you can go and do something else without having to worry about what to come up with for the rest of the week.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I definitely like that. I'm looking here for a few bit of my notes here. We've covered a bit of them. The idea of asking questions. So I did something yesterday, or 2 days ago. Yankees were playing. Drew Urshela like had this great catch where he wound up running, catching the ball, and falling in the dugout. And so what I did was I took the video, clipped it, and it just said, "Is this better than Derek Jeter's when he like flipped over in the stands?" And I thought about that when I was writing. I was like, ask a question here. That got so much more engagement if I just said like, wasn't that a great catch? Like, even though it's another question, but I made it antagonistic. Jeter's a hero, right? So
Yes.
put this up another Yankees hero. I open up TikTok the next day, it's like 30,000 hits, right? And then like 200 comments. Just because I had to hit people in the heart of, is this better than Jeter's? And like, nothing's better than Jeter's. Like, guys, that was 25 years ago. Like, it might not be, but how can asking questions help drive engagement when maybe things are stale or you're trying to make a connection with your fan base?
Yeah, I think questions are like the cheapest, and I talk about it in the book. It's like the easiest cheat code in there. Like, and people don't do it because all you have to do is kind of rework what you were gonna post anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure, like, man, let me ask a question. So like yesterday, for example, like, we announced this reissue of the Adventures in Counterculture record
Mm-hmm.
on, and so they're a huge label, so they send me all these images and the text. This is the text, this is the description of the thing, and I was about to post it, and then like you're saying, at the last second, I was like, oh, maybe I should ask people what their favorite song is off this record. And at the last second, I asked that, and then that ended up making the comment section pop way more than just saying, "Hey, this is available again."
Yeah.
What I think questions do is they actually show our audience that we actually care. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That we know they're there, that we're not just talking to ourselves, which is how a lot of social media looks, especially Twitter. There's people having full on conversations with themselves on Twitter. And sometimes, they're not talking to you, but they don't care. But the moment you ask people, you invite them into the conversation. And I think that's why questions are actually so powerful. It's like we get to see what people truly think, and we stop pretending that we know all the answers. Let's just ask people.
You ain't got all the answers, Sway.
Exactly. Right?
Right? But it's true. Like, and I think it gives some buy-in from the audience, and that goes back to that balance of like, you don't want to be a one-man promo arm for yourself, because after a while the audience feels neglected. It's like, all right, I know your album's out, I know your book's out, I know you wrote this article, whatever it is. Give me something else so that I could find out a little bit, about you, right? And I think that bridges that gap. And again, that's all part of the social media cheat code. Just reminding folks who may have came in a little bit behind, game-changing strategies to help artists conquer social media by Blueprint. And definitely give them a follow if you're tuned into me. And you can go to the website waitlist.net to pick up the book. One or two more things, I guess, on the way out. And I'm appreciative of your time as always, because time is limited. And talk about the ease of finding stuff. And I go back and forth. There's my brother Jay Zone, who I talk with on a regular, and he might be tuned in or was tuned in at some point during this. And I told him, like, there's an art to making your stuff easy to find. Like I've learned. Because, let me take this back a step. When we were doing music, or when I was doing music, when I was around it a lot and advising artists and having artists come through the store all the time, a big part of like being in the underground scene was like, nah, man, it's on vinyl. You got to get it there. Like, you got to go to Fat Beats or Q Records or whatever, whatever the store was. And after a while, it was like, I started learning, if you can't put the music in somebody's hand, only like a small percentage is really going to like dig to go get it. And we used to wear that like as a badge, like, you got to dig for my stuff. But one thing you talk about is making it easy to find you and your content. What did you learn along the way? Because like I said, it was drilled in us into like hip hop, like, nah, man, you got to get it here, or you got to get it here because I can't get myself in a tower or wherever the big places were. So we were kind of in that, like,
Yeah.
it's hard to find. You got to listen to Stretch and Bob and stay up late night on the radio. Now everything's in front of us, right? So you talk about in the book about making things easy to find. How has social media helped that for you? And why is that, again, important for people who are, trying to up their game?
Yeah, I think I learned it just from selling music hand to hand to, like you're saying, coming from the era where you had distributors and everything else, and you're like, man, how can we make this as easy as possible? Because back then, making it easy was, well, you got to get it in the stores, you got to get it on the shelves, and then it was like, okay, well, that soon translated. Okay, well, people will order online. How do we make it easy? Well, they got to go to your website, and then you would see people and dealing with customer service. I would kind of get a great idea for like when people feel like they're working too hard to find your music. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and like you're saying, a lot of artists they play this hide and go seek game with their music, where they want to make it as difficult as possible. It's like because it's almost like they feel they have to test their fans. They hate the casual fans, and so they make them go through all this unnecessary bullshit to find their music. And what you end up with is no fans because you ultimately want to make it easy. Like what I learned is that when people don't have to think about either consuming or how to get your music, they're
Mm-hmm.
more likely to do it. And music is such like a luxury. It's not like food. You know what I mean? Like you have to eat food. You don't have to listen to music every day. You don't have to buy music. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to make it easy because you don't want to treat people like they're on a damn treasure hunt. It's not, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yo, if they come far enough to even check for you the first time, everything should be easy after that. That's always
And
been.
right. And so are we talking about using tools like Linktree? Are we talking about having your name the same across social media? What's like one thing maybe you can give us a takeaway here in terms of making it easy? Right. I mean, you talked about like, all right, if
Yeah,
they find you, but it's like, what do you do to make, what have you done to make it easier per se?
I do, and I've done it even like 2 years ago. I'm sorry, I'm plugging in my phone. Sorry,
All
jumping
good.
around, but years ago, I had my own website, which was printmatic.net, and then I started
Mm-hmm.
using waitlist.net, which is, the label website more. And what I did that for was because I only had a store on one website. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to send people to printmatic.net to read my blogs, and then they turn around and they can't purchase something on printmatic.net. And I'm telling them to go to waitlist.net.
Right.
I was
Too
making
much
it
work.
too much work. So now what I do is I blog on waitlist.net and I send everybody to waitlist.net. And all of a sudden, all those people who are already there to watch the podcast or read a blog, it's that much easier for them to now purchase something because I made it easy. I use the same website, like you're saying, link shorteners. That's what I use a lot, like link Bitly or
Mm-hmm.
little things that make it easy to where you don't have to remember a link to your newest album all the time. You set the link once, then you keep posting a shortened link all over again. Standardize your handles.
Yep.
On like says you can get used to sending people to the same place. You know, even if you don't have the exact page on your site, make sure people know your site that
Mm-hmm.
you're that it's everywhere. When they look on your social media profiles, it says, okay, I can hit one link and get to your store.
That's what, yeah.
And things like Linktree make it easy. So like now, this is a new feature I just found in Linktree like 2 weeks ago. Linktree now has a feature where if you post a music video as one of your links in your Linktree, people can watch it in Linktree without going to YouTube, and it can auto play it. So what I did now, I'm like, I'm just gonna put my YouTube video link in the top of my Linktree. So now if people want to watch the new music video, they just click on there, and inside uh, Instagram, they can watch it right there. They don't have to even leave because every time I ask them to leave and go somewhere else, I'm making it difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like make it as easy as possible because people ain't got that kind of time or attention.
No, definitely. And the folks that have spent time with us this evening, we're really appreciative of you tuning in, for the half hour or so we've spent. So, we talked earlier about Super Duty Tough Work podcast. I want you to give the listeners some insight because then some people may not be familiar with it. What started you on that journey to with the podcast and what have you enjoyed most about the 200 plus episodes that you've been able to do and the ride that's taken.
Yeah, I originally there was a time when I really didn't think I wanted to do a podcast. Maybe 2-3 years before I had a podcast, people were always like, "Yo, you should do a podcast." And then touring is really what made me decide to do it because when you're riding around in a van, you're having some amazing conversations with people. You're like, man, I wish we recorded that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
With would love to listen to this kind of stuff every week. And so what we started doing, I started like formulating the idea to do Super Duty Tough Work was like, okay, I want to do a podcast, but I don't want it to be like current events. I don't want to base like hip hop news, so many hip hop. I don't necessarily want it to be based on interviews, although I do want to interview people from time to time. So ultimately what we kind of pivoted towards is like making a podcast where we talk about hip hop, but we also primarily talk about like self-help and like doing better work. You know what I mean? Not like self-help in a mystical
therapeutic way. Yeah.
Yeah, just in a very practical way. How can I do whatever it is I love to do better? And that's the fundamental question that we work on every week, because Elijah and I are not perfect. We're works in progress. And so we share our victories, we share our failures, what we did wrong, things that we didn't know that we learned, things that are working for us. And people get to see us put these ideas into effect every week. And I think a lot of people respect it because we don't sugarcoat nothing. We're not there to just tell you you're going to be successful no matter what. We tell, like, we have discipline challenges. We did the 30-day discipline. We did 90 days of discipline challenge. We invite our fans to be a part of it. Jay Zone in the house. What up? It's like the show, the thing that really makes me dig doing the show is the fact that so many people have told me that it has helped them become either better at their craft or better people. It's made them get more serious about their shit. Like, it's helped people lose 20 pounds. You know what I mean? 30 pounds. Little things like that where it help people change their diet. It helped people get serious about their craft. There's people who listen to us and are like, yo, man, I've been doing what y'all said for now, and I finally, I've been saving up, and I'm going to take the dive, and I'm going to become a full-time artist now. I want to thank y'all. Those are the things that really mean the most to me about the podcast, because people have to listen to it. People don't know until they listen. When they listen to our podcast, like, oh, this is a different podcast.
It's so relatable, right? Even though I'm kind of out the game, you're never really out the game, right? You're still always around it, even though I don't have 2 feet in it anymore like I used to. That started to pull me in because it's like, I can envision myself having those talks on my radio show when we had them. My brother Scheme Riches and Group the Most, we would always kind of talk about this kind of stuff because they were experienced in the game. They had came up through the 80s and, seen the music biz and talking through that. And then now seeing how it's evolved. But listen, you guys talk is like, man, I'd be having the same conversation with y'all if I was in the room, right? Because, and I think a lot of listeners, I hope, feel that way. It's like we're in the room with y'all because it's like, you're kicking stuff. They're like, yeah, we talked about that. I talked to my man about that other thing. With someone saying like, hey, Jay was a great, cheat code. He definitely was. But, even the most recent episode or 2 episodes ago that you did, right? Because it's, as you said in the book, like, it's my Monday mornings. It's my ride to work, right? I look for it Monday mornings. Boom, it's on. Good. I know I got something to, take that 7 ride, AM ride up into, Manhattan, right? But, the type of people that you should avoid on social media. And as you're talking to it, I'm like, I know someone like that. And I wipe my whole social media feed, the last few weeks of like, no, that's got to go. That person got to go. I got to mute this person. Yeah. Because, and I went in and told my students the next day, I said, guys, what do you think about this? If your social media decision sucks, it's your fault. They were like, yo. But it's true. It's so true, right? So I think so many of the episodes were like that. And I really think y'all hit a home run with that episode, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. Like that one and like the rappers we're supposed to like, but we don't. Like just the comedy of those 2 episodes is just like, those are probably 2 of my favorite ones, man.
It is. It definitely hit a viral nerve. So, before we peace out, tell people where you can get the book. Again, why they should get the book, what it costs. You got your time here to, give people all the math and the details.
Yeah, the book, Social Media Cheat Code. That's what this interview is about. It's basically a book about how to become better at social media using very simple principles. There's nothing complicated in the book. It's things that you can actually read a chapter in 20, 30 minutes. You can apply everything that you read that day on your social media. Like we talked about earlier, like the asking questions. That's something that you can literally change one word in your next post and test it out. and it will change all of your engagement on all of your social media platforms. These are little things that I've learned over the years that I put into practice every day. And I wanted it to be something where artists who are like uneasy about social media, who just don't enjoy their time there,
Mm-hmm.
find a way to make it work for them using simple. And that's what it's really about. It's really just making social media easy for creative people everywhere. And if you want to check out the book is available on waitlist.net. It's an easy read. It's maybe I don't even think it's 200 pages. It looks like about 170 something pages somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, it's it's an easy read. I try to make all of my books easy reads, but it's something that everyone I've talked to who's actually used it has hit me up on the low, like, yo, this shit is crazy. I'm using these joints. I don't even want to tell. They don't even want to tell nobody about the book because they feel like
They're gonna give up the cheat code.
cheat code. That's the problem with the cheat code book. The book is so good that don't nobody want to admit that they're using it.
But I mean that's a win right there, right? Except, hey, tell folks about the book because, hey, it as you said a few weeks ago, like, I think people fail to realize artists put in so much time on stuff that doesn't pay. Which, again, like I said, I'm appreciative of the time here because thinking about that, it's like, hey, we're both doing this. It's like we're doing this because we're trying to promote something to share, right? But at the end of the day, it's like neither of us got paid. I hope you get, right, some sales off this, right? But we didn't get directly paid for doing this. It wasn't like, and I think, folks need to realize that, right? Like, hey, if you like something, I learned that from music. Like, you have to tell people about the music. Like, you can't keep it quiet. Like, you have to tell people why they need to go get it, why they should enjoy it, because that's the only way that all of us are going to be able to grow, right? Is be able to share. So I hope all those people that are doing well tell other people about the book because it's applicable not just to music artists. Like I said, I'm kind of out the music game, but really rethinking like my strategy on Instagram, Twitter, a little bit now on TikTok, like what I'm doing there. Not Facebook so much because it's kind of, I don't know, it's slowing down, right? But each one has a purpose. Yeah. Each one has, like, and you even said that, tailoring to, right, the different mediums. I think it can help people because everybody's got something like they're trying to do or want to do. And when you realize like your account can't just be like a sales account and there's all other things that you can do to get creative, right? Mm-hmm. Game opens up.
Yes, definitely. And what you really want to do is you want to be able to extend the conversation, right? Like you don't want to be the guy who gets on social media and just says, buy my album, buy my album, buy my album, buy my album.
Yeah.
Album's out, album's out. Because what happens when the album is old? What happens after no one buys it the first time you tell them to buy it? Second time, you get discouraged and you don't even want to be on there anymore. And so what the book also does is it teaches you how to extend the conversation without having to feel like you got to always sell and push your shit. That artists don't like doing that, and this book is full of gems that work across any platform. It's not specific to Twitter. It's not specific. These things work on any platform, and that's what the book is for, is to help people with that. So they don't actually like give up on social media, which will probably make them want to give up on their career because they can't communicate effectively.
Yeah, because look, like, sure, it would be easy if we all could just put out music. Here it is, my music's out, and I could go, and maybe that worked in the 80s when, everyone had a big promotional budget or, folks were coming to shows all the time or, you were outdoor, it was dependent on radio. But, 30 years later, like we're not in that era anymore. And I hope that like artists and creatives embrace social media and maybe go back and listen to the Super Duty Tough Work podcast from a few weeks ago. Cut out those people who, are, bugging up their feed so you can make it an enjoyable experience and make it a part of what you do instead of something that you loathe, because it could be. I've met so many good people through social media and, folks that I hope to connect with when we can get out there more. Right. And I think there is a good world. There's a lot of good people, a lot of people that are checking and seem like, good catch just from the comments I'm seeing running through the feed today.
Yes. Rick Shine. What up?
Yep. So yeah, I'll give folks the handles too, because you talked about the website, but the handles where they can find you on most social media as well.
I should be at Printmatic on all my social medias, on Twitter, Printmatic, on here, Instagram, Printmatic. I think I'm Printmatic on Facebook as well. That's pretty much me everywhere. The website is weightless.net, WEIGHLESS.net. We got the social media cheat code. The book before that was the 10 Traits of Successful Hip Hop Artists. So we've got 2 books that are kind of based around like kind of teaching you and kind of summarizing what people are doing that's making them more successful. And this book is very direct. So, you know, I hope y'all would pick it up and just support if y'all want to figure things out, man, because you know, I think the book is really impactful. And like everybody I know that's read it, like I've got so many DMs, guys just like, yo, this shit is crazy. I just don't want to tell nobody I'm doing this stuff because
right, because someone might, but it isn't, you know, to bring this back to like hip hop, like, it wasn't that always, that was always the worry. That was always the concern because it was the goddamn scarcity mentality of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't let the next man get ahead of me. And once we got older and saw that the field really is wide open, there's room for everybody. Like, if you're doing well, and Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this, I'll tell you everything to do. Most people aren't going to do it anyway. So go buy the book. A lot of y'all will read it. Some people, I hope, will put it into action. Other people might do only 1 or 2 things. But there's going to be a few people that read it and put like 90% of the things in. They're the ones that are going to jump. Not everybody's going to put that in for, you know, whatever reason. So, but I think sometimes that comes out of hip hop. A lot of people were scared because they were worried about, like, is that dollar going to go to somebody else?
Yeah. And I'm just like, look, I want people to see what I see, because what I really want people to read the book and think is like, man, this is so easy. There's nothing in there I can't do. This is actually easy. It's all I have to do is make a couple little tweaks and I can do everything in there and change my whole experience online.
Right. It's definitely transformative. Well, yo, Print, it's been a long time coming. I'm really glad that I was able to connect with you in this way. And thanks for letting me in. That was like kind of unintentional, whatever, last week during the artist hour. I just had to tell a Freddie Fox story, but I appreciate sharing that, man.
Call in anytime. You know, I'm going to have that show just be something where, like, I'm going to have cats just call in and chop it up with me because, like, that vibe is so cool. Like, just have cats call in and chop it up about whatever we're talking about. So
yeah.
Cool. You know?
It's all good, man. If you ever come back by New York, you know, whatever, me, you, and Zona will go out. We'll go eat some dinner or something like that, man.
Hell yeah.
Definitely. All right. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Again, Blueprint, social media cheat code, game-changing strategies to help artists conquer social media. Go pick it up, Print. Thanks again for your time, man. Appreciate it. Best to you.
Peace to y'all.
All right. Peace.